Hayden Christensen is going to be in the Ahsoka series, and if you don't believe me, then you've been living under a rock for the last couple of days. I don't know when this is going out, but on the day that I'm filming this, the news broke earlier today. And if you don't believe me that the news broke, then check this news article, this news article, this news article, etc, etc. It's literally confirmed. I mean, Rosario Dawson literally put out an Instagram post saying something like, oh, they found out, see you soon, snips, something like that, and then had to delete it because obviously she wasn't meant to confirm that Anakin is in the Ahsoka series. So now that we know that Hayden Christensen, not necessarily for Anakin, could be for Vader, is in the Ahsoka series, here is 5 theories, very specific ones, of how he is going to show up in this series. So number 1, we're going with Anakin as a Force Ghost in this one, and Ahsoka will find Anakin's Force Ghost on Mortis. He is on Mortis, like the father initially requested him to stay before he left and then turned to Vader and then died and then became a Force Ghost, but he has returned to Mortis as a Force Ghost, trying to learn how to physically interact with the real world Force, just like Yoda somehow learnt in The Rise of Skywalker, or learned before The Rise of Skywalker and showed us in The Rise of Skywalker. I think this is something Anakin as a Force Ghost would definitely want to do, and Mortis is a great place to do it because last time he was there, he was amped in the Force. It's also a place where he's likely to learn a lot because Mortis is a weird place and there's a lot to learn there, and in the past he got requested to stay on Mortis, he didn't, bad things happened, so maybe he now wants to go back there to ensure no more bad things happen. But yeah, I think it would make a lot of sense if Anakin was on Mortis in some kind of way for the reasons I've just mentioned. Like, he's literally been asked to stay there before, he's wanting to learn more things like physically interacting with the Force, and Mortis is a great place for both of those things. And how does Ahsoka end up on Mortis? Well, I think it's quite reasonable to say somehow Anakin gets her there, because we know the father is the one that summoned Obi-Wan, Anakin and Ahsoka, well, not even summoned, basically brought them to Mortis. So if Anakin could do this to Ahsoka in some kind of way, that would be really, really good. And I don't think it would just be for him to say hi to her, basically. There must be some kind of purpose for her on Mortis. But yeah, I think it would be really, really good to see Mortis in the Ahsoka series, especially considering we're going to get a lot of world between worlds stuff and just the whole mythical side of Star Wars. Obviously Star Wars is sci-fi, but even more into depth of like the weird magical stuff in the galaxy that cannot be explained so simply would be really, really good to see. Now number 2, coming from Star Wars Rebels, Ahsoka is going to get a flashback to her fight with Vader on Malachor 5. Now this was the first time she saw her old master since season 7 of the Clone Wars, so that is a very prominent time in her mind basically, because that's when she fully learned that Anakin ain't turning back anytime soon. And obviously there's a lot of quotes that would be going on over and over and over in her head as kind of like PTSD, as like when he says, "Then you will die," and when he says Ahsoka, like kind of trying to speak to her after she broke his mask, and we all think, oh, is his eye going to turn blue, is it going to stay yellow? It stayed yellow, of course, but I think that could be a moment that plays on over and over in her head, and seeing that in live action recreated would be so good with Hayden Christensen behind the mask. That would be fantastic. And I think it's quite plausible because you see in Rebels when the mask is broken, it does look a lot like Clone Wars Anakin behind the mask. You don't see as many burns on his face as like he was in Revenge of the Sith, so he's healed a little bit, and he's not exactly like an old man like he is in Return of the Jedi, or at least as much of one. So seeing Hayden behind the mask is quite realistic, and you wouldn't have to change him too much, and it's a very emotional scene, so something definitely worth incorporating into the Ahsoka series to add some emotion in there. Now number 3 is probably some fan service, but who doesn't love a bit of fan service? Certainly not the fans, because it's literally service for the fans. So it's going to be that Luke Skywalker, Ahsoka Tano and Anakin Skywalker's Force Ghost interact at the same time at some point in the series. I could definitely see it happening. Ahsoka meets Luke at some point, Anakin's Force Ghost turns up, and they all talk, and it would be some of the best like dialogue in Star Wars ever. You can just imagine everything that they would want to say to each other. Ahsoka's shocked that Anakin had a son. This may be the first time Anakin meets Ahsoka since the last time Vader met her, unless the Mortis thing happens. Luke is shocked to meet his father's apprentice, and that there's another light side Force user out there at the moment, because the last one he saw was Yoda. Or actually no, Grogu would be the last one that he saw, because that was very recently, as it was in Mando season 2 and Ahsoka is placed just after that. But he would be shocked to see Ahsoka is a alive, and yeah, it would be a very, very emotional and great scene. There's been a lot of fan art about it with like them sat around a campfire. It looks really, really good, and I would love to see R2-D2 in that scene as well, and that would help confirm whether like mortals can see Force ghosts, because in Return of the Jedi it didn't really appear that the Ewoks could see the Force ghosts, but if they could somehow make R2 see Anakin, that would be really something special. Now, number 4 is going to be that Ahsoka is going to have kind of an Ezra and Kanan moment in the World Between Worlds. In Season 4 of Rebels, Ezra had the opportunity to save Kanan from the moment that he died by pulling him out, just like Ezra pulled Ahsoka out from her Vader fight to save her, but Ahsoka stopped him because Kanan was needed in that moment to ensure that Ezra, Sabine, Hera actually escape on that helicopter, and if Ezra actually pulled Kanan out, maybe they die. So this could happen for maybe seeing Anakin turn into the dark side like initially, or him doing something really bad, or Vader doing something bad or something like that, and Ahsoka wants to pull him out, but she simply can't because it would alter the timeline so much, and they don't really know anything about how like the World Between Worlds fully works. If she pulls out Vader from a particular moment, I don't know when. We don't know if it's like Marvel, maybe it starts a branch timeline, or if it completely alters the whole timeline leading up to where they are now, which in that timeline where Vader is pulled out of that moment, maybe it leads to Ahsoka dying and she just vanishes from that moment. We don't know how it works, but basically Ezra will convince her that because they don't know how it works, she can't do it. Because yes, many bad things has happened because of Vader, but it could have been worse potentially. They just don't know. So Ezra will convince her, or maybe not even Ezra, someone will convince her that she shouldn't do this. I think it's likely to be Ezra. It'll be a really nice parallel for Ahsoka convincing Ezra, then Ezra convinces Ahsoka, and we know that Ezra's probably going to be in this series, as I think the main plot is going to be finding Ezra, so that would be a really, really good one. Now, number 5 is going to be a flashback to Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Order, kind of like PTSD, like I said in the one earlier, because she blames herself somewhat for Anakin's turn to the dark side, because obviously Anakin was extremely upset when Ahsoka left the Jedi Order, and obviously Anakin's not the best with his emotions. Maybe she thinks that put him on the path leading further and further down to the dark side. Obviously he was on that path for a long time before Ahsoka left the Jedi Order, but at the end of the day, she did somewhat contribute, so she wouldn't be wrong to blame herself somewhat. But then at the end of the day, she was just doing what she thought was right, and that's exactly what she should have done. But she is still part of the reason that Anakin turned to the dark side, although she didn't do anything wrong. And maybe if she sees Anakin's Force ghost, she like apologizes for doing it, because obviously when she met Vader, she said, "I won't leave you, not this time," clearly quite sorry for leaving him initially. So maybe now that she actually has Anakin / Vader actually listening, rather than just fully immersed in the dark side and not listening to what anyone's going to tell him, it would be good to see how Anakin actually reacts to her saying this. I assume that he would be like, "Ahsoka, it's not your fault," or something like that. But it would be really good to see her get that weight off her shoulders and kind of accept that it wasn't her fault that Anakin turned to the dark side. Of course it wasn't. Palpatine manipulated him for years and years and years. Obviously the Jedi Council didn't help, but it was 95% Palpatine's fault, if we're being honest, if you exclude Anakin himself, because obviously he was somewhat to blame. So with that being said, that is going to be all for my 5 theories of how Hayden Christensen could show up in the Ahsoka series. And if you enjoyed any of these, please do leave a like, subscribe for more Star Wars and some Marvel content. And yeah, let me know any theories you have in the comments.
Goodbye.